I'm Tom Keene, and it is the Qatar Economic Forum in a most unusual time as we escape from a pandemic. So many parts of the world still in pandemic, but nevertheless, it is good news into the end of 2021. It's bad news for me that we only have a 9-minute discussion with Peter Mandelson. Lord Mandelson, of course, is public service to the United Kingdom, and far more than that, after his public service for Blair, Brown, and others, very active in some of the issues of the global economy and our global politics as well. Lord Mandelson, thank you so much for joining Bloomberg at this Qatar Economic Forum.
Pleasure to be with you.
Well, wonderful to have you with us. I need to go across the aisle to the conservative Johnson, who is selling a trade idea for Britain, and it's been percolating in Brexit after Brexit. And that is global Britain, the idea that there will be a new Britain that will trade worldwide. Tell us of your optimism that Britain can find a new globalization.
Well, of course, Britain has always traded worldwide, but what we've done is to do so with the weight and muscle of the European Union and its giant single market and trading bloc behind us. Now, having left the European Union, obviously, we are giving up that weight and we're giving up that muscle. But the theory is that what we're acquiring instead of weight is nimbleness, that we can negotiate trade agreements with counterparties in a faster way, a more flexible way, and without having to take into consideration all the competing interests and demands of 27 other member states of the European Union. And that's a perfectly good theory. And of course, we've now inked in an in-principle agreement between Britain and Australia, for example. It hasn't yet been completed. There's an awful lot still to be negotiated as it happens. But I would just make this point to you, Tom. Sometimes speed in trade negotiation, and I speak as a former trade commissioner for the European Union, sometimes speed in trade negotiation can be the enemy of what's good, let alone perfect, because you're so keen on getting a political result that you sort of skip over the detail and you don't force the result on your terms that you might otherwise be able to do if you go in a slightly slower and more pedantic way. So, yes, you can be more flexible, but sometimes it's as well to show your counterparty that you are prepared to slow things up, that you're even prepared to walk away from a trade negotiation if necessary. And we've got to show that. Otherwise, what we will end up is optical trade agreements, political trade agreements, rather than those with real content and real substance.
One of the most difficult interviews I've had this year was with Lord Patton, actually a set of interviews. And of course, this touches upon the United Kingdom and the new events, the new political economy, and certainly the new politics of Hong Kong as well. You've provided real leadership looking at Great Britain and looking at China. Let's start, first of all, with a general statement on how the United Kingdom must approach China, the new Great Britain and the new China.
Well, I think what you're seeing across the West, I mean, the United States, but also the European Union and its member states, but also additionally Britain, is a rethinking, a recalibration of our relationship with China. That doesn't mean to say that we're turning against China, that we want to contain or defeat China, but nonetheless, there is a feeling that we need to give more weight to issues to do with human rights, the rule of law, but also that in our trade relationship, we need to be playing on a more even playing field. And I personally support that. But, we're not just trade competitors with China. We are also multilateral partners with China, for example, on climate change, as well as I say, geopolitical rivals. So, there are different facets to this relationship. And I think that whilst we are rethinking and recalibrating, I don't believe this will mean that either in Europe as a whole or in Great Britain, we will go as far as the United States might want us to do in completely rethinking that relationship with China.
I am fascinated, and this, of course, is with your politics of the left and a new left, if you will, the dynamics of domestic United Kingdom politics. Peter Mandelson on what the British banks should do in Hong Kong. And I mean this within the Qatar Economic Forum, a broader view, not so much the actual mechanism of banking in Hong Kong. We see Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC, move so much over to Hong Kong. But what would be your counsel of what the British financial system should do when they see a new Hong Kong?
The British financial system has to do business in Asia as a whole, in China in particular, and of course that includes Hong Kong. And naturally, we don't make the laws in those countries in Asia, and certainly not in China or Hong Kong. We have to abide by the laws that are locally made, even if there are many aspects of them with which we disagree. But it's unthinkable for us simply to pull stumps and walk away from Hong Kong. We're not prepared to do that. But we have signed up to an agreement, as you know, when we handed over Hong Kong to China from British rule, that saw Hong Kong incrementally move more and more into the orbit of mainland China. That doesn't mean to say that we have no further interest in democracy and the rule of law in Hong Kong. We will express our views, but we have to be realistic because we have signed up to that handover. We did so many years ago, and we have to live with that.
Lord Mandelson, and one final question, if I could, and I'm embarrassed at the short conversation. You and I could go for hours here. There's so many good events to speak of. And that is the theme of this economic forum, which is on the supply constraints, the shock of a pandemic that's out there. Do you see a permanence to the supply dislocations so many of our attendees are living?
No, I don't. I think what the experience of the pandemic has taught us is that overwhelmingly global supply chains are resilient. They've served us well. They've not broken down. And I believe that they will continue to underpin the global economy for decades to come. That doesn't mean to say that in some respects we will want to make certain adjustments. There are certain areas where we want to diversify supply and not be reliant on one single source. There may be some areas too where we want to bring production closer to home so that logistically those supply chains are more reliable. I know some people are saying that we should onshore or literally bring home. Well, it's worth looking at in certain areas, but in the main, I think we have to recognize that global supply chains have served us well, and they will continue to do so. They serve everyone's interests in the world. They grow trade, grow economic prosperity, and of course, employment across the world. And that, of course, serves all our interests and not just some.